Today we're going to make the Blossoms and Bouquet Bookmarks by Kimberbell. This is a machine embroidery project. It comes in a kit. It's a web exclusive. In your kit, you get everything you need to make the 2 corner bookmarks. There's also bonus projects. I've already separated and cut the fabrics I'll need. I wanted to show you, you get more than you need. And this little elastic stretchy can be used to make the book cover. I've already done a video for that. I'll link that below. Let's get started. You're going to want to look at your instructions. This will give you your hoop size, your fabrics, the kind of stabilizers you need, and any additional materials. This embroidery felt and leather is in your kit. This project can be done in a 4x4 hoop. The smallest hoop I have for the machine I'm using today is 5x7, so my hoop will be a little bit larger than required. They also give you your thread colors. I've pulled those already. I've also prepped with my fusible backing. So I'm going to start here hooping the wash away stabilizer. This is the wash away stabilizer, what we're going to be using today. And you want to go ahead and put that in your embroidery hoop. So cut a piece big enough for the hoop that you're using. I'm going to go ahead and loosen my hoop. Pull the inside out. Put my stabilizer down. Put the inside back in. And then tighten my hoop. You want to hand tighten, and then if your machine has the slot for a screwdriver, you also want to use a screwdriver and tighten it. Otherwise, when you're embroidering, the inside can pop out. That's happened to me before, and then it's really hard to get your project lined up and keep it going. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that with a screwdriver. Today I'm embroidering on a Baby Lock Pathfinder. I'll show you how to import your file in case you're new to embroidery. This is my screen. If you're using a Baby Lock or a Brother, it's going to look either the same or very similar. I'm going to use the embroidery edit. This is to import from my USB drive, which is already in the side of my machine. I have a lot of files. I'm going to look for my Kimberbell folder. Right there. And now I'm going to look for my bookmark folder. Right there. And we're going to start with the floral one. There's my design. I'm going to go ahead and set my design. You can see here, it shows you the hoop sizes that you can use and the size of the stitched out design. You want to slide your hoop into your machine. Make sure it's all the way in. Pull the lever down. If it's not all the way in and the lever isn't down, it won't run. I'm going to go ahead and press the embroidery button right down here. All of my stitches are loaded. The machine will work top down. It'll follow the instructions. When I'm ready to go, put the foot down, the light turns green, I can start. Let's check our instructions for the first step. We've already done our fusible backing, loaded our stabilizer, and put our design on the machine. We're going to start by stitching the corner front placement line. This little box here indicates to use a matching thread or a neutral thread. We'll stitch that. We'll line up our fabric, we'll stitch the front seam, and then we'll go to the next step. Place your corner front fabric right side down, centered along that placement line, and then we're going to stitch the front seam. For the next step, we're going to go ahead and flip our fabric and give it a press and then tape it. I have my little Oliso mini iron here. And I have a mat that I bought at QuiltCon. It's called Iron Matique is the name of the company. I'll put the information below. It's just laying on my sewing cart. I'm going to flip that and I'm going to press it. The next series of steps are all done on your embroidery machine. You stitch the corner front tack down line and then you follow the instructions to stitch out each part of the design. Your instructions will always show you the thread color changes, and the thread key is at the front of the instructions book. I have all my threads lined up. I'll go through all of this, and then we'll pick up again after everything's embroidered when we move on to a step where we have to trim. Let's get to the embroidery machine. notice this thread here. For some reason the thread cutter didn't cut the thread. If that happens, just go ahead and cut your thread. I don't know what happened there. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. Let's talk about when this happens. The bobbin thread is almost empty. On this machine, that means it's empty. It's not going to go much further. What do? I'm going to go ahead, cut my thread. Need to take this off my machine and change my bobbin thread, and then I'll show you how to pick up where you were on your design. I've got a full bobbin. I'm going to go ahead, close this, and I'm going to back up about 10 stitches. That's usually what I do, just to make sure that it'll tack down and start where it left off. We'll go ahead and resume stitching. Before I go to the next step, I've got a couple little jump threads I need to trim. I'm going to trim those off, and then we're going to start on instruction step number 20. We're going to trim our fabric close to the stitch line, the top, and the right edge only. See how it says do not trim here? Don't trim there. You want to trim your top and your right edge only. I've got a pair of duckbill scissors here. This is the part you want facing your stitching to protect your stitching. So for me to trim this, I need to flip the hoop the other direction. Now I'll be able to trim here and here. Got these snips. I'm going to use these to get just a little bit more of this off. Be careful not to cut your stabilizer. We're going to stitch the corner back placement line. We're on step 22. You want to take your project off the machine. We're going to turn it to the back side, placing the corner back felt, covering the project, and aligning the bottom edge with the placement line, and we're going to want to tape this in place. Let's do that. I have my project off the machine. Turn your project upside down. You want to be on the back side, and it tells you to place your corner back felt covering the project and aligning the bottom edge right there with the placement line. That's the line you just stitched. So grab your felt and you're going to line it up on that placement line, the one you just stitched. You don't go over, under, you line it up. And then I'm going to put my hand on the other side and just make sure this is pressed down. Once everything is taped in place, like the picture, you go back to your machine and we're going to stitch the corner, back, tack down line, and then the diagonal line detail. So we're going to stitch the tack down line, which is going to go across the top and down the side, and that's indicated in a neutral color. And then we're going to stitch a diagonal line detail. You want to make sure to switch back to the color thread you're using that's indicated. They're calling it linen. So make sure before you do this you switch to the right color thread. It's in the instructions. I thought I'd show you, this is the color I'm using for linen. I've also been using this whenever it said to use a neutral color, so I don't have to keep changing my thread. We're going to go ahead and stitch the corner line and then the diagonal line. Next we're going to stitch the base front placement line. This is number 25, and then it has us stitching the cutting line. You'll see on the instructions there's the little eye. That means you want to use a thread that you'll be able to see because you need to see the cutting line. We're on step 27. You remove your hoop from your machine, place it on a cutting mat. We're going to use the rotary cutter, cut through the stabilizer on the cutting line and extend the cut a 1/2 inch past each end of the line, and then we'll remove our tape from the back. So since we're going, just like the picture has here, 1/2 inch past, I went ahead and I grabbed a ruler, and I've got a water soluble marker here. I'm going to measure a 1/2 inch beyond each edge of the cutting line and just put a little mark on there so I know where to start and stop my cut. There's my mark. And there, I just made a tiny little mark. I'm going to use my mini rotary cutter since it's such a small area, going from my start line along that visible thread to the stop point. I went ahead and grabbed a little tiny ruler, one that'll kind of fit inside my hoop, just to help make sure that I get along that line. Now you'll notice when you start here, this cuts really easily. This is just stabilizer. When you hit your tape, it's a little bit harder to cut. That's why I wanted to get this ruler, make sure I cut straight. And we'll double check. Make sure I did cut through. We did, 1/2 inch above, 1/2 inch below. And now it tells you to go ahead and carefully remove the tape from the back of the hoop. So you want to flip your project over, and we're going to remove our tape. If it doesn't immediately want to come off, don't yank it. Take your scissors, get it going, and then get your tape off. We're on step 28. Read through this. I'm going to keep it here on my stand so I can read and go through the motions and show you what we're doing. We're back on the front side of our hoop. We want to get our base front fabric. That's right here. And it says to place it right side up, covering the placement line, tucking the upper right corner of the fabric through the cut opening in the stabilizer so that it is beneath the stabilizer and the previously stitched corner area. So you're going to tuck it in where you just cut. So go ahead and pull that through. That's why you trimmed a 1/2 inch beyond, so you'd be able to do this. So you need to pull it through the opening. Here's the stitched corner area. I can see it. It's covering that. It's covering my placement line, so we're good there. The lower left of the base front fabric will be on top. The upper right will be beneath. Be sure the edges extend beyond the placement line on the front and the back. That's what we just talked about. So double check your placement line there, placement line there. One thing I did notice when I just flipped it up to double check, I have some blue thread. I don't want that to show through. So check and make sure, do you have any errant threads or anything underneath, because this is a white fabric. That's better. Next you want to flip to the back, and it tells you to tape and tape. Let's put on some tape. You'll probably need to put your hand underneath just to make sure that the tape sticks. Now you want to turn to the front, and you don't want your presser foot to catch. You want to place tape over the cuts in the stabilizer. On the picture it has the tape going here and here. because the next line we're going to stitch is going to be a square around it, so you don't want your foot to catch, so you want to make sure this is all taped down. I think I have more than enough tape, but again, the machine's going to go around in a square and you don't want it to catch. Make sure everything is taped down, and then we're going to go back to the machine for step 31, stitch the base front tack down line. Get your hoop off the machine. For the next step, you want to flip your project to the back side. Grab your piece of embroidery leather. This is a PVC vinyl product. You just call it embroidery leather. You want to take your piece and place it right side up, covering the entire project. You can see your stitch outline that we just did on the embroidery machine. You want to cover that. Make sure that's covered. And then it tells you to tape the corners in place. Once you have your corners taped, you're going to go back to your machine and stitch the base back tack down line. We're on 34. We're going to go ahead and take this off of our embroidery machine. Remove the tape, trim your fabric close to the stitch line on the left and bottom edge only. Once you've taken off your tape and trim, you want to flip to the back. You're going to take off your tape and you're going to trim close to the stitch line and get rid of the excess embroidery leather. You also want to take off this tape. Everything excess that's outside of the stitch line, we're going to go ahead and trim and get rid of. Everything trimmed on the back and on the front. You're just about done. We are on 36 and it tells you to match your bobbin thread to the top thread to stitch the final outline. Your final outline is going to go around the whole bookmark. So you want the same color in your bobbin as your top thread. I'm going to go wind a bobbin. Project from the hoop. Have my project off my hoop. One thing I notice is that visible thread for the cut line. Apparently I did not cut right on the visible thread. I can still see that thread. I can leave it or I can seam rip it and pick it out. I need to go trim that off. I don't have to, but it'll look nicer if I go ahead and just remove that bit of tape. So I'm using my snips and cutting this off. That's better. I got the blue out and I cleaned up the edges. What you want to do is trim the stabilizer, and again this is a water soluble stabilizer, so any excess that doesn't get trimmed off, you'll rinse in cool water to dissolve anything that's sticking out, and then you want to lay it flat to dry. I'll do that with this one, and while this one's laying flat to dry, I'll make the second bookmark and I'll show them both to you. Both of my bookmarks are done. Let's have a look at them. Here's the one that I did in today's video, and this is the second one that is part of the instructions. Something I did notice, more with the first one since this was my first try, I did need to go back and do a little more trimming along here. Mine had really fuzzy corners because I didn't trim them quite tight enough before I did that final outside satin stitch. So watch your trimming to make them come out the best that they can be. Let's try them in a book. I've got my book here. This is the book cover, which is also part of the Bookish Project kits. I have a video tutorial on this. I'll link that in the comments below. If you've never used one of these bookmarks before, just go over the corner, just like that. Or if you'd rather have them on this side, they can go on that side. And it marks your place in your book, and it looks pretty. This kit also includes a number of bonus designs. Let's look at some of those. We have the Book Lover embroidery. They show it here on a drawstring backpack. The Bookish applique, which they show in a frame. The I'm Reading applique, which they show on a quilted pillow. And the Sorry, I'm Booked applique, which is shown on a tote bag. I hope you've enjoyed making your bookmarks. Thanks for watching.